This comes to us from CE Pro. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Giving credit to shading's other half.
Oh, it's not us.
On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk Citterwell expanding, headphones are getting big, and the experience economy. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 503, Spec Speak. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Jason Knott. He is an evangelist over at D-Tools. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And then we've got my good friend, Mr. Avi Rosenthal. He's a partner at BlueConnect Partners. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, and for those of anybody, I have a fan. One fan probably realizes I'm sitting in an airport lounge because that's where I sit. So my apologies for the background.
Not a problem at all. All right, gentlemen, we are going to jump right in with a story that comes to us from Residential Tech Today. Citterwell Electronics expands smart home ecosystem with Matter-enabled solutions. Go read through the article, especially if you've never heard of Citterwell, because I have not heard from them either, or heard of them either up until this article. They've got a really good smoke alarm piece, as well as a bunch of other new products that are not only Matter compatible, but they also have HomeKit as well. So, Jason, let me start with you on this. This is one of those things that a lot of people may not know of, this company, but they've got an opportunity, and we have an opportunity to learn about them. Do these products fit, and how could they fit potentially in a CI business?
Thanks for asking. I was not familiar with the company until I read the article. I'm being 100% honest. But I looked at their product line, and it looks impressive. The things that I would take away from this is that we have seen in D-Tools a growing number of integrators, and actually the mid-year report that I just recently did showed that in proposals, the number one most common category that integrators had in their proposals the first half of this year was security. And so, I came from the security background before, and so I kind of beat that drum to death. I know of integrators who are out there very consistently doing retail-oriented plug-in CO detectors and things like that in all their trucks to help the technicians kind of learn how to sell. So I could see this. I don't know the go-to-market strategy for Citterwell Electronics. It does look like a retail line, but I could see integrators. The takeaway for me is that they should be looking at security, having some sort of an element of it in their go-to-market strategy with their customers, even if it's plug-in devices that they can upsell out of the truck. Yeah,
that's a great point. Avi, when you follow this, I know you know Citterwell probably better than all of us, is an understatement. They were at CEDIA. What is the play for them in the CI channel? Where do you think they fit?
Yep. So a very, very brief history on Citterwell. Great OEM company. I've worked with them for many years with my Z-Wave hat on, right? So they are Z-Wave members. They've been good standing Z-Wave members for a long time. And they were a great OEM house. They're now attempting to brand and bring their brand to the States. I do think that Jason is right. There's a little bit of a retail play here, but I do believe as well, the reason why they're at CEDIA is because they have Z-Wave certified products as well as lots of other products. They are moving more towards connected and integrated with the other platforms out there, right? As a Z-Wave product, you can be integrated with a whole bunch of other platforms. So I think Citterwell is really looking at a broad market stroke. They definitely respect the CI, the pro channel, and that's why they signed up to be at the CEDIA show. And I think that the integrators need to take a look at it. What they make, the sensors, can be really hard to get good quality, high-end sensors. And Citterwell makes just that. They make a great smoke CO combination, a great CO detector. They make water sensors and all kinds of things. And they're not just sort of the cheapy stuff. They're actually well thought out, well integrated. I know that sounds like a commercial, and I apologize for that. I don't mean it to sound like a commercial. I'm not being paid by Citadel. They're not a client, but they do make some decent stuff. And I think that it's sort of like back in the day when people were like, well, is Samsung going to take the CI channel seriously? Well, they should be at Cedia. Well, Samsung is, and they do, and so does Citadel, and they were. So look at it from that perspective, and I think that the integrators will find that their solutions are pretty cool.
Fantastic. All right, gentlemen, let's change topics for a moment. This comes to us from Residential Systems. Why consumers are trading up their headphones. Again, go read through the article. It really covers an interesting take on the fact that essentially sub $100 headphones used to dominate the market, but people are moving into a more premium space where the mass premium is between a $200 and $600 unit cost, essentially there for models. And what we're seeing is, again, the streaming services are increasing the quality that they're offering, and thus consumers are realizing that they can get a better approach. Avi, I want to come back to you on this. Is there a way that this can translate into the home?
Oh, absolutely.
Is this part and parcel?
What's amazing to me is how many people still listen in their home environment on a set of headphones. All right. There's still a good chunk of people out there that listen, and they don't listen with the big listening room necessarily. Maybe they live in a smaller apartment or a smaller place, and they listen with headphones. And so I do think that headphones can translate. And I think the reverse is also completely true. I think that when people install a listening room and they install professional home theater, when they have an integrator relationship and they get true audio, then they're sitting on an airplane and they're saying to themselves, oh, well, this is not the same experience that I'm used to at home. And look, I'm a little embarrassed. I'm sitting here in an airport lounge and you can see I got the classic Apple in my ears, but this is what I travel with. Now, for those of you who can't see on the video, it's a set of Bowers & Wilkins top of the line headphones over the ear that, those are my go-to when I travel because they give me, in my opinion, it's very subjective. In my opinion, they give really great sound. Again, now that's the second commercial I've given in one podcast. So I was like, all right, sorry guys, I'm not being paid by B&W either, I promise. But I do believe that it translates really well, man. I think if somebody spends a reasonable amount of money on a listening space, it's the integrator's opportunity to sell them that kind of listening outside the home. And I think it translates both ways.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. Jason, when you see this, when you follow this, one of the big questions I have is there a correlation between, for most users, the quality of headphone versus the style, the form, the function, right? We've been through multiple iterations of this. First, it was Beats. And when Beats came out, everyone had to have Beats, even though they were bass heavy and the mids were terrible. I digress. Then it became the Apple Maxes, where everyone was clamoring to go buy $700 Bluetooth questionable over-the-ear headphones, but they had that aesthetic and everyone had to have them. Is there a correlation between the status symbol of some of these brands and the actual audio quality? What's driving that?
Yeah, that's the one thing in this article that I kind of disagreed with, that it mentioned that the consumer perception and behavior was migrating from utility to identity. Mm-hmm. And I think what you just said, Matt, tells us, the identity has been where it's at in the headphone space for quite a while. Beats, everybody who wanted Beats because they wanted to look like a cool kid rapper, it didn't work for me. I don't know what happened.
me neither. I'm with you.
I thought you had it, man. I thought you pulled it off.
Avi dog is what we call them, right?
Exactly.
The good news out of this to me is, I'll just jump on what Avi said, is that, every integrator should be carrying headphones, and the fact that we're talking about audio quality as a driver here for the headphone space, that hopefully means that we're driving potential buyers to want to have very nice home systems, nice audio quality in their homes, whether it's in a listening room or whether it's with their TV. If you look at the top brands that integrators are already carrying, Sony, Sennheiser, Bowers & Wilkins, Focal, Bang & Olufsen, these are already top brands that integrators carry. So to me, I think like Avi. I can't do the in-ear. It doesn't work for me. I do over-the-ear, even not even when I'm only flying. But I do look like a goofball with them. But that's okay. That's norm. So no, I think this is great, and I agree with you. I think integrators know the identity of those brands that I just rattled off. The key is, will the customer identify with those brands that we just rattled off, and not think that Beats and Bose are the two brands they need to go to.
How, just before we move on, for all the integrators that don't run a showroom, what's the play there? Is there a play? And I'll pick on myself for a minute. We don't have a showroom, right? We still sell headphones, not a ton, but we do sell them and we offer them, and we're very adept at having those conversations as I wear my Shures, since we're all name dropping everything. How do you go about that? Or is that just the traditional way you sell anything?
They're all portable. Do yourself a demo kit, invest in 4 or 5 pair, throw them in a case, make sure the batteries are charged, plug them in when you get to the home, let them audition them. I guarantee they will buy one of the 5.
There you
Absolutely
go.
Guarantee.
If not, Avi will buy a set from you.
There you go. Time. Absolutely. Every time. Look, it's all about the experience. They're small enough that they can go in your kit. You carry a whole bunch of other stuff with you. You throw them in the truck. I mean, it's because they're small. It's not like I'm telling you to throw a pair of Aston Martins on the back of your, right? This is a pair of Martin Logans on your back and lug them around. It's easy. It's easy. And it's quick revenue because, by the way, you won't just sell one. Because if the husband buys one, then the wife's going to want a pair. And then the kid's going to come in the room and he's going to want a pair. And the next thing you know, you've sold $2,000 worth of headphones.
Well, and it solves lots of problems of my husband wants to watch this or I want to watch that and I can't.
Exactly. And I can't.
There's a beautiful set of headphones.
Yeah, gaming too. Don't forget the gaming play.
Yeah, gaming. Gaming is a huge deal.
Yeah, that's a whole other animal as well. All right, gentlemen, let's hit potentially our last story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today. What it takes to succeed in the experience economy by a good friend of ours, Danielle Carr. Go read through this article. Not last week, but the week before, we talked all about pitches, and this dovetails really, really nicely into that. Talking about how the role of the integrator is evolving, and we can do a great job to get beyond the tech aspect and really talk about the experience aspect of what we offer. So, as I said, go read through it. She hits 5 practical ways as far as beginning every project with a lifestyle interview, use an outcome-based proposal, train your team on emotional intelligence, build post-installation touchpoints, and partner with manufacturers that enable experiences. Jason, I want to start with you on this. I love the article because it just continues to beat that drum that we've all been talking about for quite a long time of you have to sell the experience. How do we go about retraining ourselves to sell and talk in this manner and not in the speak that we're so good at?
Yeah, I think she hits a lot of the buttons there. The article is really good advice. This isn't new advice, though. So this is, I think, I can recall, having conversations with Avi 20 years ago where he talked about the questionnaire that he would have for customers, and integrators have to get very close to the customer. Do you get up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom? Who sleeps on what side of the bed? Do you watch TV in bed? I mean, think of the questions that you ask your customers already to be able to fashion. Those aren't tech questions. Those are questions about their lifestyle so that you can fashion the technology around their lifestyle. So it's great advice. I also did like the fact that she talks about the 30-day wellness check, only because, again, beating the drum of the service of a service agreement with a customer, if you make sure that you've got some sort of a follow-up play in your regular sales process, then hopefully that's going to lead to setting the stage for selling service agreements. But you're right, Matt. You hit it on the nail there. That this is great advice. It's not new. It just maybe it hasn't sunk in for a lot of integrators. They are still selling the technology, which they shouldn't be.
Yeah. And I think it's tough because, again, we spend so much of our day-to-day in the tech aspect of it, knee deep in specs all the time, that it really takes a lot to get out of it. Avi, I wanted to ask you, when you've come around to the experience side of this and you're pitching the experience all the time, there will come a point in that conversation or in that discovery where the specs do come up and people want to know what size TV are we talking about? What resolution capabilities do we have? What's the Wi-Fi speeds going to be? All of those things. Is there a good way to transition back and just jump into that spec for a minute? It makes me think of like walking into a Porsche dealer, for example. They talk about the car as an extension of you, and then they for a moment go, yeah, you can do 0 to 60 in 1.6, and then they flip back to the lifestyle of being a Porsche dealer. I am not a Porsche owner, but I've heard these things.
Okay, so first of all, it's Porsche.
Porsche.
No, I won't
didn't
be
want to
that
be
guy.
pretentious.
Yeah, exactly. I won't be that guy. But you bring up because I am a car guy,
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are a lot of really good parallels, right? Because when you're a car guy, it is all about the speeds and feeds and 0 to 60 and the gas mileage and all of that. But it's also about the experience, right? It's getting into the vehicle, making it be an extension of you. And I think that the same can be true of home technologies. And I think that the way that you bring it back is some of the things that Danielle actually talks about in the article. It's about the solution sale, right? And where I learned to do this, and Jason, I thank you for dropping me by only 20 years. Believe it or not, it's 30 years since I became an integrator, which is shocking, absolutely shocking. But what we did was in the computer industry, the industry that I was in before this, is it was all about solution providing. And so I applied those learnings into the home technology world. And Danielle hits a lot of those. When she talks about what do you love doing at home on the weekends and entertaining guests and things, you can talk about like, hey, we're going to give you 100 watts of power on the patio in your speakers because when you entertain your guests, you want to be able to rock out to that music. And so you see, you have to tie it sort of back and forth between the idea that the reason for the spec is to solve the problem or to provide the solution or the emotion that they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And I think if you tie those two things together, then it becomes much more relevant. And then they're like, well, what if I get 200 watts of power? Do I get an even better experience? Does it solve the problem even better? Oh, an upsell opportunity. Well, do you like to rock out or do you want to blow the doors off the place? And then you have different conversations based on the emotion that you're eliciting through the specifications. And Danielle does a great job of sort of laying that out. And it's not a new concept, but I do believe that it is important that at least, once every year, once every couple of years, an article like this gets written because it's the most important conversation you can have with an integrator about running their business is being that experienced salesperson, is being that emotional salesperson because you're in people's homes. And if you're not tying this back, then you're not creating stickiness, as we like to call it in the marketplace, with your clients. They're just going to find somebody who does connect with them emotionally.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, gentlemen, let's hit our actual last story of the day. This comes to us from CE Pro. Hello, darkness, my old friend, giving credit to shading's other half. Again, go read through the article because so rarely do people in our business kind of think of this when we're talking about shading. We're typically talking about sunlight and how we can take advantage of sunlight. In this case, we are talking about darkness and controlling light into your home, and that's not just for the home theater. Avi, when you read this, I'm surprised at how often controlled darkness is overlooked because it's a huge factor in so many environments. I'll tell you a quick story. We just renovated our bedroom and we went very dark and moody with it. It's actually just like my office here. We're getting very moody with all of our environments, if you will. And my wife turned to me and she's like, we got to replace that shade. because we have a light filtering shade because the bedroom used to be bright and airy and all of those ridiculous things. And now it's dark and moody. And we had this whole conversation about darkness before Mitchell even sent me this article. How do you go about reshaping that conversation with your customers to talk essentially out of both sides of your mouth when it comes to controlling the sun?
I've got some really good information here that I learned when I took a little detour and worked in the hospitality industry for a number of years. When we used to bring automation to the hospitality, to hotel rooms, darkness was an absolute must. There were actually special fittings and special methods of mounting shades and drapes to make sure that people who want total darkness in their hotel room, regardless of which direction it was facing, could get that total darkness. And I learned a lot of skills and techniques while working in that industry, and they absolutely apply not just to home theaters, but lighting. It affects our sleep, and it affects it both positively and negatively. I travel for a living, right? My circadian rhythms are constantly in a state of flux. I'm the guy who the first thing he does when he gets to a hotel room is open the shades. And that may seem odd, but I want to see the sun in the morning. I want the sun to wake me up because it's going to reset my clock quicker. But there are people who are the exact opposite and need that darkness. And I think what the integrator needs to learn, the more they get into the drape and shade business, is how important it is to have the right technique and to have the right understanding of the needs of your customer. And this goes back a little bit to the last topic, right? If you're questioning your customers about their lifestyle, then you understand how important it is for them to have a dark room or unimportant to have a dark room, right? In my case, I want the shades open because I want the sunshine in because it helps me reset my clock. And I think that, again, it goes back to the idea that integrators need to be the partner in the technology and the lifestyle of their customers. And the better integrators are the ones who understand how their customers are going to live. And let me tell you, don't overlook aluminum tracking. Aluminum tracking side lights for your drapes and shades are very important, and they're not too expensive.
Side channels are
channels are your friend. Absolutely.
Yep. We just did a road trip with the kids a month ago now. I was so impressed with a couple of the hotels that had side tracks, and my wife is like, "It's a really nice hotel. It's got all these other things, and you're over here obsessing over these stupid aluminum tracks." I'm like, "Yep," because the kids are not waking up at 6 a.m.
Every integrator should hopefully know everything that was in this article already. But at the very minimum, it's a great article to send to your customers, in my opinion.
Oh, that's a good point.
To talk about. So I think that's really my takeaway from this is take that article and send it to your customers and talk about it, because it's really more of an education about shading, but every integrator should hopefully know what was in that article already.
Good point.
Jason, just before we leave this, should we be making sure that all of our techs are aware of this kind of stuff too? Because I've sat through most training from almost every shade manufacturer. It is pretty rare. We only talk about side tracks in the bedroom or in the theater. And there are so many other places where light control is really an important factor.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think from top to bottom, every integrator, the technician to, the person who's answering the phone should know exactly be able to converse with the customers about these sorts of things. So, yeah, no, I would agree with you, Matt, that it needs to be an expanded conversation. I know, one of the things I can recall, when my wife and I first met, she had a completely different way she wanted the room in terms of darkness versus the way I did. And, we had to adapt to that in terms of the types of blinds that we have and the blackout shades and whatever, and the use of them wherever we've lived. We've had to kind of adapt to that. So it's an important conversation for not just the technicians, but for your customers.
That is true. All right, gentlemen, let's leave it there. Thank you both so much for joining us. Avi, if people want to connect with you, learn more about BlueConnect partners, where can they do that?
So we have a really cool new website at BlueConnectPartners.com. Please feel free. And then, of course, we're on LinkedIn and all of the other Facebook and things. And everybody knows how to find me. So, but please do get on our new website. It's really cool.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Jason, if people want to connect with you, learn more about everything that D-Tools is doing, where can they do that?
The easiest way is to go to our website, which is d-tools.com, and also now just dtools.com. You don't need the hyphen anymore.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on most of the socials. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.